gentlemen, and welcome to the last session for the day, but not a boring one, I can assure you. It is a very exciting one that we are seeing take a lot of time in corporate boardrooms, and that is to how to deal with the entire sort of corporate governance landscape that we have in our country, which all of you all, I'm sure, will agree with me, is extremely complex. To throw some light on this topic, we have put together a illustrious panel uh, headed by Suhas Tuljapurkar, who has set up this firm Legacies, which again I'm sure every one of us is acquainted with. I was just reading through Suhas's biodata to try and make some notes on how should I introduce him. And I am very enamored by a new term that he has put out in his CV, which is GRACE. So all of us talk about GRC, but Suhas talks about GRACE, which is governance, risk assurance, compliance, and ethics, with a fusion of IT. So perhaps Suhas, you want to sort of call GRACE it, and therefore you can get the IT element into there as well. Suhas founded Legacies Services in 2006, and since then has developed several IT-enabled legal support solutions, including the very popular Legatrix tool. But apart from that, there are tools that help in the director's evaluation, on IPR management, on innovation capture solution, contract management solution, virtual data room, and litigation management. So, true to the acronym that Suhas has set for himself, he is bringing in an element of IT into all these various complex aspects that all of us have to deal with on a daily basis as internal auditors. Suhas is also a member of the executive committee of the UN Global Compact Network India, and was instrumental in developing solutions for the public-private partnership framework, at the same time ensuring statutory compliances and ensuring transparency in the procurement processes in smart cities. Suhas also is an advisor to the Digital Crime Unit of the state of Maharashtra, and has worked with governments to provide expertise in drafting various legislations. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Suhas to take us through the next 40 or 45 minutes of this panel discussion with this illustrious panel that we have put together. At the end of which, as I mentioned earlier, we will be announcing the winners of our leaderboard. So everybody, please do keep at it, keep the interactions, keep the questions coming for this panel as well. At the end of the Q&A session of this panel, we will freeze the leaderboard, and the prizes will be announced basis the status as of then. So with that, Suhas, over to yourself. So, Suhas, you're on mute. Sorry.
No. Thank you very much, Dubas, for that introduction. I think my request to everybody as the kind of auditors or internal auditors, please recheck my resume. You may find a couple of issues there because I was member of Executive Council of United Nations Global Compact Network. My term got over. The kind of addition in place of that would be, I'm a member of Technical Advisory Committee on NFRA, and that's where I deal with a lot of statutory auditors, and we're trying to bring the audit quality issues structured correctly within India. But having said that, it's a great pleasure and the privilege for me to be part of this panel and try to moderate it. I will make an attempt because we have such stalwarts on the panel currently that it's going to be my attempt to do justice to their credentials and experience. Let me introduce and welcome firstly Renu Chellu madam. Thank you very much for gracing this occasion and being member of the panel. Um, Renu Madam joined State Bank of India as probationary officers way back in 1973. And thereafter, I think, rose up to hold various leadership positions. And these positions are like Deputy Managing Director of the State Bank of India, Managing Director of SBI Hyderabad, President and COO of SBI Capital, Managing Director and CEO of SBI DFHI. She's held various board positions, and these board positions are in the capacity as not only independent director of on the boards of Shaffer India, NCC, and various other companies. But very interestingly, she serves as an advisory council on ASBM University Bhubaneswar, and is on the advisory board of Natya Tarangini Kuchipudi Dance Institute of Dr. Raja Radha Reddy. Madam, that's something which we will all look forward to as an element of credentials that you have, which is very, very forthright and interesting there. You've also served as independent directors on the boards of Reliance Nippon, Fullerton India Home Finance, and various other companies. You're co-chair of Center for Rural Credit and Development Bank in NIRD Hyderabad, National Institute of Rural Development. Uh, Chairperson of Hyderabad chapter of Prima, the Professional Risk Manager and International Association, and represented associate banks in management committees of IBO. A warm welcome to you, madam, and thank you very much for joining this panel. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to some interesting discussions. The next panel member that we have is Mr. Amitabha Mukhopadhyay. Thanks a lot, Amitabhaji. I think after a very, very illustrious career, and I think we worked together at a couple of places, I think as a group CFO of Thermax for a long, long duration there, and ensuring that a company like Thermax, which is multidisciplinary businesses all across the range from electronics to chemicals to boilers to power plants, making sure that Thermax retains its reputation and goodwill was actually on Mr. Amitabh's shoulders. They're very broad shoulders. You can look forward to his participation in the panel. Now, post Thermax, Amitabh is independent director on the board of Quick Hill. He works in the space of finance and governance function, but very interestingly, he's held the roles as general counsel as well. He's been a lawyer, he's been an auditor, he has been a CFO. It's amazing to have that kind of experience. Thank you very much for joining this panel, Amitabh. And we have, all of us probably know, and I think Nagesh doesn't need any introduction to Indian corporate sector. Mr. Nagesh Pinge is an expert in ethics, governance, risk management, and internal audit. Um, I can only say one thing. Whenever we have kind of looked at Tata Group and whenever we have talked to anybody from Tata Group on issues such as finance and internal auditor, I think the fingers always pointed to Mr. Nagesh. Whether it was a Jaguar Land Rover senior management out there in London, out there in Coventry, or Bombay House, I think Nagesh has always been that person, which is a go-to person in terms of issues on audit, internal audit, and finance-related issues. Nagesh is also independent director on various companies now. Uh, Goa Carbon and Arvind Fashions, MCX, Cleary Corporation, Aditya Birla Sun Life Insurance, Hero Housing Finance, Utkarsh Small Finance Company, and an insight of 37 years into internal audit. We couldn't have got a better person to kind of talk about the topic today. Thank you very much, Nagarji, for joining this panel. A warm welcome to you all once again. And a very interesting kind of a very interesting uh, topic that we are going to touch upon, which is really to say that in wake of various corporate failures that we have seen, one, what is the role of internal auditor? Predominantly, while the kind of failures are happening, what is it that internal auditors were doing? More importantly, in the current context, I think when an internal auditor is now supposed to wear various hats, he is supposed to look at, are there cyber threats, and is the company really adequately protected from the point of view of understanding the incidences on cyber threat, to the extreme element when everything goes wrong. And we have seen this happening quite often when the criminal liabilities are being talked about. That is the fraud reporting of an initial obligation of internal auditor. So there are various kind of hats that internal auditor wears. More importantly, the perceptions today are that if you have a very strong internal audit in place, I think you're able to prevent the governances, and we'll talk about prevention aspects first. Uh, so from that perspective, I'm going to request your opening comments from each one of you, starting with Renu Madam, the ladies first, and definitely I think we will come back again and again to you, ma'am. Over to you, Renu Ma'am.
A very good evening to my co-panelists, to the organizers, as well as all those who have joined in this. It's my honor and my pleasure to be on this panel. I'll start by just quoting very succinctly from the Companies Act, although I'm sure that may be a repetition. It says, it's an independent function involving continuous and critical appraisal. So I just want to focus on independent, continuous, and critical. And it should help the organization to improve its risk management and internal control systems and corporate governance. So very succinctly put, but actually to the point, if we think on this. The scope of internal audit is not prescribed anywhere, neither in the Act, nor in the rules, nor in the SEBI, because it is left to be decided between the management, the board, and the internal auditor as to how and what areas are to be covered. But there is an increasing focus on this, which is by the regulators, which is evident by the fact that it has been brought under the ambit of both the Companies Act and SEBI's LODR regulations. Typically, internal audit would cover the entire gamut, whether it's financial transactions, the treasury, the operational transactions, the operational audit, the management audit, compliances, IT systems, cyber security, investigations of various kinds. So it's a huge area. And I think internal auditors have to be reskilling themselves all the time to be able to cope with this wide area of that they have to cover. The audit normally tends is to identify both the operational lapses in the laid down procedures and policies, as also any systematic or process gaps, and to suggest improvements in the latter, if they are systematic or process, which is a very, very important function according to me, because in the company, nobody else would be able to identify easily the system gaps that may exist, not the operational. On a superficial level, what I've said appears to indicate that internal audit does not have a critical role in preventing corporate failures. Since some of the major causes of corporate failures are like manipulation of books, high leverage, frauds by promoters or management, poor corporate culture in the company, the state of the economy, etc. And these are all generally beyond the scope of an internal auditor. Also, we've seen that generally wherever there has been a failure in India, the focus has been, or the spotlight has been on the statutory auditor, the regulator, maybe the rating agencies, but really not the internal auditor. But I believe that this is going to change in any case. Increasingly, regulatory oversight is going to toughen, even on the internal auditors. Anyway, if one looks deeper into the issue of what is the role in preventing corporate failures, then I feel two areas which have been identified as significant reasons for corporate failure, which may be termed as risk blindness and information glass ceiling. they are internal auditor has a very significant role to play in both these areas. So there are two very significant areas where it's only the internal auditor, I would say, who has a significant role. So what is risk blindness? Generally, companies pursue profits and growth. And in their pursuit of profit and growth or market share, they very often overlook the risk factors. And the tendency is also to turn a very blind eye to small deficiencies which may be noticed either by auditor or by themselves because they feel it is not very relevant. But blindness is insidious. It percolates and it festers. And most problems are much easier to deal with when they are at a small scale, not when they have actually festered and grown big. So internal auditor has a very crucial role, not only through his reports, but through the follow-up reports of his original reports, whether the action has been actually taken to make sure that those are not repeated. It is also important for the internal auditor to be conversant with the analytical tools of technology, to sift through volumes of data. There's a data overload everywhere. Particularly in financial services, I can assure you, it's a huge data overload. So to sift out what is relevant for audit, I think that capability has to be developed, or it's a very important capability to deep dive into that data and to see what is relevant. And not only what it is throwing up as transactions, but what kind of messages or signals or possible manipulations for potential areas of concern which may be thrown up. And here, which may pose a very serious risk to a company. Here I would, like to just touch upon the Nirav Modi and the scam that had happened with PNB. I feel if the internal audit, I'm not aware or privy to what really happened there between the internal auditor. There could be 2 or 3 internal audit teams auditing and they're separate, they don't talk to each other. But even then, if the internal auditor had his antenna up to look beyond what the data that was being presented to him, he could conceivably have seen there is a potential risk there. Because, if you think of banking or financial services, then anywhere where there's an exposure, you have to see whether the exposure is within limits. And that limit was in the core. So any auditor, really, if he was, let's say his antenna was up, he could have looked at it. But it went on for 7 years. So that's where the issues lie. I think internal auditors need to bring out all this and to the notice of the audit committee or the board, because they interact with them. And if these issues which they bring out, they remain unaddressed. So this brings me to the second, serious reason, which is what has been called the let me think, information glass ceiling. That means sometimes the information tends to be overruled by the senior management. There is an information, the auditor is putting it out, but it is getting overruled, or it's being taken out from the context, from what is presented to the board, or it is so sanitized by management in the presentation that is, even though the internal auditor makes the presentation, but sometimes it gets sanitized. Now, here it is the idea that an internal auditor is independent is very relevant. By virtue of the fact that they are independent and they interact with the audit committee and the board, they have the opportunity to break this glass ceiling and bring it to the notice of the board so that the board is better able to undertake its fiduciary responsibilities. In fact, internal audit, according to me, is one of the strong pillars on which the board, rather at least the audit committee, depends on. Because operational efficiency at the end of the day is what makes the company sustainable. If there is no operational efficiency, it cannot be sustainable in the long run. And in the long run is actually where it starts failing. If it's not sustainable, it doesn't grow, then it's bound to fail, if one looks at the longer term. At the end of the day, no doubt, it is the commitment of the management or the promoter towards integrity and transparency that corporate governance depends on, and also on the regulations that are there in the country. But
Sure.
with regulatory oversight, I think, becoming increasingly stringent, internal auditors' role is going to increase, according to me. One of the examples I'd like to give is Societe Generale. I don't know if you're aware, in 2008, how many people are aware, a rogue junior trader in SocGen Paris. He did derivatives trading. He started off small, and he was a very junior trader. He just got bored sitting on his desk and having to do very small activities. So he started off with derivatives unauthorized. And he made huge profits, because derivatives are like that. You can make huge profits and you can make huge losses. His seniors, he started making huge profits. His seniors were aware, and the auditors pointed out that this is unauthorized. He was not authorized to do these kind of trades. Seniors were aware, they let it go because the profits were there. And then when it blew up, the bank lost 4.9 billion euros, the 7.2 billion US dollars, because of this rogue trader. And for the first time in its history, it's a very big bank, it's a very old bank, it recorded huge losses. And this dealer alone dealt with $73 billion worth of deals. Unimaginable, if you look at it, which was higher than the market capitalization of SocGen at that time. So I think, in conclusion, I would say, if anybody today imagines that a company can run efficiently and sustainably without an internal audit, I think they will be living in a fool's paradise. And I think that's actually, I have my answer, or you have your answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. A very strong message. Very, very strong message, I must say. I'm going to request Nagesh. I mean, Nagesh, man talked about 3 or 4 issues, but predominantly risk blindedness, information overload, operational efficiency becoming critical. You see, till now, we haven't had internal auditors being blamed for corporate failures, because probably the perception is that they're not contributory to the failures. Is this perception right? Is it going somewhere else? Or is there a survivorship bias which says you haven't looked at internal audit, but that's where the problem resides? Because independence, employees being internal auditors, 138 of the Companies Act actually allows an in-house employee to be the independent director, which in a sense at times is a conflicting issue, probably. So please, Nagesh, I'm not going to kind of hold you back, but please go ahead.
Yeah, I think thanks first of all to IIA Bombay for inviting me here. I'm a past president of IIA, so it's always a pleasure to come back to my alma mater, as I call it. That's one. Second one is, I think we had a great session from Richard Chimber prior to this, and Narendra Neja, interviewed him on that particular part. One thing that I can tell you, having worked on both sides, I was a chief internal auditor, and I have been in the internal audit profession for almost 2 decades before I switched to what we call the independent director as a profession. I think in that context, I must say that I always believed that, a chair of audit committee as well as the audit committee members look at what I call as seamless assurance. And it is not just from one party. And I think you will appreciate more because you believe in that word grace. And this is where it comes from a multi-dimensional kind of, perspective on that account. So I would like to say, as a chief of, the chair of audit committee, I think one looks at a 6-dimensional view. It comes from a different parties. One of them is, of course, the CFO, who represents and he carries with him the annual accounts and everything that he comes across, budgets and actual versus thing. He looks at treasury. Then you have compliance and ethics, which is your part of your side. Legacy has a great product in that. So, compliance ethics is also very critical from that perspective. Then risk is also there. And if today risk has a separate committee, Nevertheless, you will find a combination of audit committee members being part of that risk, because risk and audit cannot work independently on that account. So that's again the third piece. The fourth one is the internal financial control. Though you may like to link it to the CFO, frankly speaking, it's an independent kind of thing that you have to look at it, because CFO represents overall perspective, but when it comes to CFO assurance, that IFC assurance, he has to give that typical certificate, which is very critical on that account. And then, of course, you have two auditors, as I call it, the stat auditors, or in international parlance, we call it external auditors. And last but not least, and this is where I represented it, is the internal audit on that account. So it's a 6-dimensional or 6 parties. I remember this particular thing always. Zubin Mehta used to organize that philanthrop orchestra. All those typical many people will be there on that account. It will be a seamless kind of performance. And if you see a little discord somewhere, that attention would go to that party. So this assurance business is more like that kind of thing, where as a chair of audit committee or as an audit committee member, you expect a grand performance coming out of them. Their body language, their presentation should speak the same language in that regard. And if you see something wrong, it could be from any of the 6-dimensional things. There is a matter of concern to look at it from that perspective. So I think that's a very critical kind of thing you have to look at it. And for internal auditors, it's very important for them to see to it that they speak the same language as their other 5-dimensional, other 5 people, they talk about it in that regard. And I think in that context, we are talking about corporate failures. I always believe, and I have been on the other side of the things, and there are many examples where I would like to call them as a corporate failures. It's not that, the organizations have gone berserk or have closed down. Some of them have. So like, the Volkswagen case, as I can clearly see, where there was an emission scandal on that account. Now, I would like to ask a question to myself as an internal auditor, because I was in Tata Motors at that time. Do you think I could have stopped that kind of thing where, they were creating one SKU, which was to defeat or deceit the emission control people on that account. And it was structured in such a way that, probably any internal auditor, if he had that business knowledge, would have asked a question, why this has been designed in that typical way. And I think in that context, an internal auditor going there and doing just a cross-checking to see whether, the process is there or not, SKU, you have a right purchase order being made or not, you have a right kind of people coming in or not. So this is tick boxing, probably would have failed in that particular aspect. But instead of that, he would have asked the existence of that SKU, why that SKU is created, the intention, the rationale, what it makes to do that kind of thing. If somebody had asked this question, and probably that intelligent guy could have stopped this kind of practice on that account. Another example I can cite is, this British Petroleum, the Gulf of Mexico scandal that you are aware, the well got burst basically. Apparently, just 15 days back, prior to that, there was a great discussions around this particular thing. And one of the auditors, which was a local auditor, had in fact given his apprehension, saying that, we had a problem. We feel that, something could happen at that time. And the entire management team, in fact, apparently 15 days before, recognized that, yes, we have a challenge, but some help will come in next 3 or 4 weeks' time. And I think that was a really wrong kind of perspective that happened, because in next exactly 10 days, it got burst that well. So, now this is where these corporate failures I'm talking about. I think internal auditor could play a significant role. Of course, there are some typical kind of corporate failures which are happening at a top level. And in that context, I think I would like to say, at best, a big acquisition happening where you have done a wrong thing. Or I would like to say something like, probably external environment hitting you. Like, for instance, it can happen to an organization like airport, for instance. Airport, I always felt that it is, 24/7/365, it is a profitable business on that account. But then it happened that during this particular period of time, the airports were totally vacant for almost 6 to 8 months on that account. There were very limited flights that were coming on that account. So barring those particular part, I still believe, and smart internal auditor who has that business sense in this particular thing, will be able to distinguish that particular part. And I think in that context, I always like to give an example. People tend to compare something that hurts you. They call it a black swan event. Frankly speaking, it's not the black swan events that hurts you, because that is something which is beyond your control. I always believe there is something called gray rhino event. That means there is something which is already there with you, which is a stealthy matter, which remains with you in that organization. You are aware of it. You probably start getting used to it on that account. It could be a pollution-related part. It could be something like that Volkswagen-related part. So those things, it's like a elephant in the room. You are aware that there is a problem, but nobody dares to raise this point. And I think as an internal auditor, I believe it is necessary for us to come out with these points in a very elegant fashion to some people on that account. And I think a live example I can cite is where were internal auditors a question, probably ILFS, nobody could have asked, because there was no great kind of audit team, or there was neither even risk management committee, which happened for many years. So I believe these are all the things which are known to people. And then when it happens, people call that as a big corporate failure. But I think that could have been avoided on that account. So from that perspective, I believe that 85% to 90% of these corporate failures, internal audit can play a substantial role in that regard. Now, how to put it together is a big challenge. And I think that is where, I think we have to learn, for which you require right kind of, I would say, soft skills. You require right kind of business knowledge and business intense knowledge, which is critical. And that's why in Tata Motors, you must have seen, it, my internal audit team had great people who have worked in many of those typical organizations where they were in manufacturing car, they were in R&D division, they were all across the people, they were part of my team. So it was a great kind of mix that we had created. By virtue of that, anything that happens in, even we had done the audits of crash tests. And I think crash test is a mandatory thing which is required. Now I can take a view saying that, guys, you get a certificate of that from some authority and you work on it. But no, in Tata Motors, we always believe that crash test, my internal auditor guy also will be there. And I will put a right kind of perspective on that account. So I think you require, I think we heard in the earlier session, you require a passion for it. If you decide to do that, you will be able to catch these kind of corporate failures to a lot greater extent, and you can, escalate that level at a right kind of thing. So this is, 2 bits from my side, and I will give other people, opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Nageshji. Thanks a lot. I think very clearly, again, a very strong message that an internal auditor can play a significant role in preventing failures. I'm going to request Amitabh for his views. And I think one thing that's coming out is when things start, they start in a very small manner. I think Renu Madam touched upon it, Nagesh touched upon it. And somewhere down the line, it becomes monstrous issue. So when it is small, that's where I think probably an internal auditor can play a role in plugging it up. So if taking the Philonic, the harmonic orchestra kind of an example that Nagesh gave, very interesting. If somebody is missing the notes, I think the focus ought to be there. Amitabh, your comments on the entire space, and you've been a CFO, so obviously you looked at umpteen audit reports and auditors, internal auditors, who by virtue of default there in Thermax were external people, not the employees of the company. But please, your take, sir.
Thanks, sir. I think over the last 30 years, in 3 decades, as I have worked along, I have seen the expectation itself has evolved. If I go back, we were looking at auditors, be it internal or external, just to find out some fault. Fault more to do with numbers, internal auditors more to see if somebody is doing some malpractice, and that's all. Over a period of time, the focus has moved from transactions to system and processes. And today, this expectation is completely different. As you have said, what I expect from an internal auditor, that itself was changed over the years. And it also depends on what hat I am wearing. when I wear the hat of a CFO, my expectation from an auditor is something. And when I shifted to the audit committee member, the expectation becomes something else. And as a business head, my expectations were completely different. And I must say, in some role, I have also felt that they are more as an inhibitor than a support. So I think those challenges also an internal auditor actually faces, and that's the reality. I think a couple of points we need to keep in mind. You used the word survivorship bias. And it is not merely survivorship bias. There are various kinds of biases which are at play today. As Mr. Nagesh said, that there are 6 different kinds of perspective which is possible when we look at an event. So over the years, the behavioral sciences have improved like anything. Today, the kind of work that you see on bias and heuristics, today the different kind of conflicts that we understand, and the progress towards institutionalization as we have seen, I think that is phenomenal. And internal auditor, a successful internal auditor actually needs to understand which are the competing biases which are at play when they look at a subject. And second thing is that when we look at a different perspective, if I am a CEO, I will look at something to be pushed. As a sales head, I want to take more chance. As a CFO, I would like to be more conservative. A risk guy wants to find out what's the acceptable risk level. Internal auditor brings another perspective. So one of the most important aspect of an effective organization is also to find out when these different contradictory, or actually you can say complementary perspectives, when it is at play, you should not fall prey to over-institutionalization. In fact, today in political philosophy, it's one of the bigger challenges. And if you see Furukawa's works are there on that, that a country like US today faces the challenge of over-institutionalization. They get stuck between different kind of checks and balances that things cannot progress. A very large organization also faces those kind of problems. So when an internal audit has to create a path, yes, whatever we have discussed so far, I think those were extremely relevant. They were the pearls of wisdom which has come from Nagesh ji, Renu madam. I don't want to repeat that, but I will say finally the capability of the internal auditor will also determine how effective it can be. And there is a need for a balance between external and internal people. The familiarity with the subject matter and the familiarity with outside knowledge, if you can combine these two along with the element of independence, then only we will be able to cross those barriers and make it a very, very effective thing. I will end with one anecdote. In fact, we used to, all my life, I have seen internal audit as a process auditor and all. But when this Companies Act 2013 came and put the responsibility on the board of directors that they have to comment on the effectiveness of internal control, and the internal control also was provided a wider meaning, which actually goes to the extent of whether the company is running its business effectively and efficiently. I realized at that point of time, the board looked at, after leaving everybody, they found out that here is the internal auditor. He is the best guy who can provide me this comfort. And I have seen in one of the finest audit committee chairmen I had the opportunity of working with. And the way he engaged with the internal auditor, defined the scoping of the entire project. And finally, what kind of a comment and comfort that we need from the internal auditor, which gives the confidence to the board, which is an extremely critical component. That was something which is coming, and going forward, that will be more and more important role. As you have said, everything starts small, and over a period of time, it becomes a Frankenstein monster. I think internal auditors are the best place to catch it, and to that extent, the profession also needs to evolve. Thanks. I think that was the comment I wanted to add.
No, thank you very much. That's an extremely interesting take, Amitabh-ji. I think, see, I'm going to move a track a bit, and being lawyer, I'm a bit cynical, and that's why I'm going to kind of come back with some of the issues which are bothering me personally, and I'm sure they're bothering others. We have seen, for example, in Satyam episode, internal auditor being prosecuted with equal vehemence, venom, to say that you ought to have seen whether the bank reconciliations happened or not. Although the BR reconciliation was primarily the responsibility of the statutory auditor, but there was an expectation that internal auditor ought to have caught these issues. You see, because what happened in the litigation, and I'm going to take 1 minute to explain that, actually CBI started saying, tell us who originated this issue. And everybody said this is systemic in nature. System generated those BRs. System generated those receipts where the reconciliation could not be done and has not been done. So I think the CBI was struggling to find out where is the system, who is this person called system, and they eventually said it's probably that internal auditor who ought to have actually looked at things in a different manner and ought to have caught it, and he is equally contributory to the entire episode. That's one example. The second example that I'm going to give is in terms of what happened in Pune in one of the high builder developer case, where actually statutory auditors or auditor who was going to give the end use certificate was caught. The promoters were caught. The entire family has been caught, went behind the bars. And the issue was actually diversion of funds for the projects which were not meant to be the listed entity projects. And I think there are a host of other issues. When the investigating officers actually looked at everything, I think they came to the conclusion, and which is probably purely based on perception, that the statutory auditor have failed in their duty, and there is a dereliction of duty there definitely. But they based their view on the internal audits report. Now, when push comes to shove, this is bad on the part of statutory auditor, but they did it to say that there was an internal auditor who ought to have checked it. So there was a finger pointing there, where I think even the internal auditor got caught. So the perception today is that there is a high expectation from internal auditor, and especially when frauds happen. You see, the fraud is something which mitigates various other things. For example, independent directors have taken a defense that if the management has defrauded, by definition, the fraud is something which will not be unearthed by us when we look at it with simple eyes, so to speak. That's the defense that the independent directors have taken. Various other people have taken various defenses, but predominantly saying if it was a fraud, it could only be seen by microscopic eye. And who in the organization has a microscopic eye is the internal auditor, because he's supposed to look at the issues with microscopic eye, and that's where he should be competent enough, capable enough to unearth those elements which go on to become Frankenstein monsters as fraud. I'm going to request, and I'm going to go on the reverse order this time. Amitabh with you, then Nagesh, and then Renu madam, please.
I think what you said is 100% right. See, there are 4 people: CEO, CFO, internal auditor, statutory auditors. Long back, in 2003, after the Enron, when the certification, CEO certification, CFO certification came, and I was preparing, how do we go through the documentation so that it enables me to give that certificate? I was asked a simple question by the chairperson of the company then. So as a CEO and CFO, you don't know what you are signing till now. So I think that was a very shocking thing. Somebody putting forth like that, it hits him. When a big fraud takes place, statutory auditor and internal auditor irrespective of any justification, somebody can always say, as an auditor, if you cannot find out when things go wrong, why do we need these functions? So it becomes a question of basic existence justification of those functions. So I think it is right. And I go by the simple principle that in India, there were not great industrial safety measures for a very long time. But when the Bhopal gas tragedy happened, the whole world, the whole country came back as if it could never have happened. But if you really ask a rational question, it could have happened anywhere else. It happened to be, it is such a bad luck that it happened in Bhopal. So it is always when a fraud takes place, a big one, not a small one, but a existence-threatening fraud takes place, I think nobody will be able to protect. I think people are going to ask questions, and these functions need to step up themselves to face such questions at such moment.
Nageshji?
Yeah, I think let me just, sorry, Suhas, no intent with any bad intent, but I think let me clarify. I was as an internal auditor at that time in part of the internal audit fraternity. Even today I continue, but now I'm more on the independent directors kind of side. I think in Satyam, the internal auditor, if at all he was arrested, it was not arrested for not doing internal audit job, but doing some additional job, which was more like a, helping the promoters in doing something besides the screen of internal audit. And I think that was something which was more like doing the things rather than, reviewing it on that account. So that is one part. And why I'm explaining this is because we have a lot of internal auditors here. They will unnecessarily get worried on their part of that particular thing. And the second thing, I think we are talking about a Pune-based feeder. I don't want to take the name there, but I think there is a huge difference, as I call it, as a difference like between the chalk and the cheese. Statutory auditors and internal auditors are totally different. Statutory auditors is certifying the status as on that typical day, and he's looking more on the cutoff. So he's looking at who's the winner and not the winner, like that last brace of the thing in the race. Who is the first one to cut that particular thing is what they are certifying it. Whereas the internal auditor is totally not connected with it at all. He's looking at internal audit as an ongoing kind of basis on that account. Certainly, stat auditor can blame to some extent internal auditor, but in international parlance, there is a clear-cut kind of demarcation where external auditors say, when I'm certifying something or I'm justifying something, I'm relying on the work done by internal auditor. Unfortunately, in India, that kind of privy or that kind of liberty is not given to stat auditor. Their rules are very clearly laid down. So there is no way an internal auditor will be bashed for, through a stat auditor to say, "Arey, you never told me that," kind of thing. But it is a good practice that both of them should talk to each other. And I think in that context, I ensure that first is with internal auditors, and not only internal auditors, with all those 6 dimensions that I've said. We believe in having as an audit committee chair, one-on-one kind of session with all of them. So we get to know a different perspective on a one-on-one basis. And at the same time, I ensure, and this is something which is required, that stat auditors and internal auditors meet also regularly. And I invariably insist that internal auditors should report, should also be sent copied to statutory auditors. So, it is known to everybody what is to be done, including the audit plan is also looked at by stat auditor. And if there are anything that they want to add, we add them. But that doesn't, take away the onus of stat auditor in any less extent to say, since they have looked at it, we will not look at it. So I thought I'll just clarify that part. Otherwise, my internal auditors will hound me after that. So many messages will come on my team to say, how you didn't do that. So I thought I'll just clarify on this particular part.
I completely understand and agree with you on both the counts, Satyam as well as the builder developer case. You see, my difficulty is when we are building evidence as lawyers, you see, and when we are saddled, and I have been party to both the cases. Okay, in both the cases, unfortunately, or fortunately, internal auditor came to us in both the cases, Satyam as well as in Pune. And we had a tough time explaining and distinguishing the role of for the role of statutory auditor. And I think at one place we have succeeded, at another place we didn't succeed for various reasons. But the fact is that the perception and investigating agencies don't, even if you lift the corporate veil, they will not understand. And it's a tough call to make them this differentiation between internal auditor and an external auditor. You see, that was the toughest call. And in the meanwhile, the internal auditor is facing a preliminary inquiry that goes on for years, then investigation that goes on for years. And mind you, if the numbers run into 4-digit crores and every other scam today in India is 1,000 crore plus, then the investigating officer says, I have to be cautious. I can't let go any one contributory to the offense that I perceive it as contributory. So from that perspective, I think the internal auditor is stuck there for years together. And that is a problem. It needs a better solution. And I think it needs probably a statutory protection somewhere. If you're saying 138 Companies Act is where internal auditors are mandated. But I think I'm not going to kind of influence with what I think. Renu madam,
I agree entirely with what Amitabh and Nagesh has just said. I think once there's a major fraud, then perception that the government is managing it or the investigating agencies are catching everybody becomes very, very important to them. And
Sure.
therefore, what is, and you know, it's sometimes very clear that they don't really know whose role is what. Some of them, some people are knowledgeable enough, but everyone is not. And once at the base level, the investigating officer writes something, I think nobody will cut that out.
Yeah.
It's another issue.
That's the problem.
So even if somebody higher up, and we've seen the reverse also, where the lower person has said there is absolutely nothing. Somebody sitting higher up will say, why should we let them go? You know, so basically it is like you are left holding the baby. I mean, whether you are an internal auditor, whether you are an independent director, you can be holding the baby, whether you had nothing to do with it also.
Sure.
So that's number one. I've seen it on both sides, you know. Then internal auditor and statutory auditor, one of the ways that we can improve is both of them sit in the audit committee together so that they know what the other side, nobody can say, I wasn't aware of this aspect. Neither the internal auditor can say, nor the statutory auditor. And in most of the companies, good companies, this is a practice, but not in all. But I think increasingly we make this a practice, we can probably have a better system. And it's a good idea to have the audit plan examined by statutory auditors. That's my takeaway. I don't think we've got it done.
Subhas, I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you here. We are out of time. So if you could just wrap up in the next couple of minutes, please.
Sure, thanks. I mean, Dubhash, when I saw you, I realized that I am failing in my, my KRA of putting this within the timeline. Sorry for that. But I'm going to request just 1 minute, one thing that Chief Audit Executive today needs to do. And I'm going to request each one of you for that one thing. And we'll quickly wrap this up after that. Renu madam, one thing for internal audit.
Chief auditor needs to do. I think he needs to be very clear that he needs to bring whatever he feels he should tell.
Okay.
Simple.
Amitabh.
Forthright, independent.
Good, thank you. Nagesh.
I think he should be the first port of call for any challenges, problems that a business executive or CEO or CFO has. I think that should be the ultimate that comes in. And he probably can be treated as second port of call if he has, that particular person has probably Alexa at home.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot to all three of you. Dubhash, I don't know if you have time to take questions. How
No,
do you-
I don't think we have time, Suhas. Unfortunately, we are completely out of time. We're already 7 to 9 minutes overdue. But Nagesh, Renu, and Amitabh, thank you so much for your time and for your valuable comments to this session. And thank you, Suhas, not just for your anchoring this session, but also for your continued patronage of IIA that we've been having for the past so many years. So with that, I think it's time now for the last activity for the day, which is for my colleague Percy Amal Sadiwala, who is the Senior Vice President of the IIA Bombay chapter, to give his vote of thanks for the day, as also more importantly, to announce the winners of the leaderboard. So Percy, over to you.
Thank you, Burzin. It is a matter of honor for me to conduct the vote of thanks. Good evening, dear fellow participants and speakers. The IIA Bombay chapter's annual conference, day 1, comes to an end. And with this, on behalf of IIA Bombay chapter, I would like to formally thank the keynote speaker, Mr. Damodaran and Mr. Richard Chambers, and also the other speakers of the day who spared their thoughts on important issues for internal auditors. The gold sponsors, Marjan and Ibra, Legacies, and Protivity. Our silver sponsors, Sama Audit Systems and Arya Technologies. And our technology partner, eTrends, for this, without whose support this event would not have been feasible. The Institute's BOG members, IIA India's BOG, and the volunteers who tremendously supported this IIA India Bombay chapter's conference, the office staff, and last but not the least, our event management team of Tradition and Trends who put this event together. I'm also obligated to thank all the participants for patiently hearing this day 1 of the conference. And this vote thanks, I would now go on to announce the leaderboard prizes for which you all have been anxiously waiting for up to now. So the first place currently is being held by Mithilesh Singh, and he is the winner of Samsung Galaxy Tab. So congratulations, Mithilesh Singh. The next in line is Nirali Shah, and the third in line is Neha Pansari. Fourth is Yogendra Date. All of you get Jabra speakers, sorry, not speakers, earphones. And so thank you very much for participating in the leaderboard activity, and look forward to meeting you tomorrow as well. With this, I call the day's proceedings to an end and look forward to seeing you all tomorrow at the IIA Bombay chapter's annual conference day 2, where we will also announce the IIA Excellence Awards for the corporates. So do stay tuned, and we will also have the leaderboard prizes as usual. Thank you.
Thank you, Percy. And with that, we close day 1 of the IIA Bombay conference. Thank you, everybody, once again for attending.